Welcome back to Her Rules Radio. I am so excited to have a dear friend of mine. I know I sometimes say that on this show. I introduce people that I'm about to interview, and I'm like, this is a dear friend. This is actually a dear friend. Rebekah, or Bex Borucki, founder of Bex Life and the Blissed In Wellness Movement. She's a mom of 5. She's had her own TV show. She's a meditation yoga guide, birth doula, and author of You Have 4 Minutes to Change Your Life, Managing the Motherload, the Calm and Clear Mindfulness Kit, and Zara's Big Messy Day. She's also the founder of Wheat Penny Press, a children's publishing imprint and nonprofit. So your mission is to make mental health support and stress management tools accessible for everybody. Mm-hmm. And you do this in a lot of really creative and powerful ways.
And exhausting ways.
And exhausting ways. Well, remember back to when I said a moment ago, mother of 5.
Yeah.
You know, we've known each other for, I don't know, somewhere around 10 years, 8 to 10. Mm-hmm. In that time, you have been creating the most incredible tools and practices for people. And you've now, in the last couple of years, been inspired to totally pivot a majority of your work to be a children's book author.
Yes.
What inspired?
It all led to this.
I know, it feels like it all led to this. Yeah. But how did that happen? Because you're not a 28-year-old who's like, I'm going to be a children's author.
Thank you.
I mean, you look amazing. That's not what I meant.
Oh my goodness. First of all, I have to say, I'm really appreciating your beautifully soothing NPR voice this morning.
You're welcome.
This. Yes, I need this peace and calm in my life, folks. What made me do that? Well, like I said, everything led to this. We all, I think, have dreams that get tucked away. Both of us have lost our mothers. So we relate on that level. When my mother died in 2013 and I was going through all her things, I found watercolor paintings. I didn't know she was a watercolor artist. She had just started taking classes. Wow. I found poetry. I found other art. And it was beautiful and joyful. I've since gifted these paintings to my family. I had them framed up and because it was a surprise to everybody, but also really sad because I realized that it took her so long to express herself in the way that she felt called to. So I started very intentionally looking back on things, dreams that I had not buried so much, but just put aside because they weren't practical or they wouldn't make money. And one of them was writing a children's book. I've been dreaming about doing it since my oldest, who's now 22, was a baby. And you know how I go. So I get this idea in my head and I decide to tell every single person I know about it, which means go online and tell people I'm writing a children's book. And I took a little class at a local community college with the weirdest guy ever. First of all, children's book authors are weirdos. And they're the best.
They're so, and like children's television.
Yeah, super weird.
It's all like drug induced.
You know what though? I'll say this because, listen, I don't have this personal experience of using any hallucinogenics. Just kidding. I've done a lot. So it really does bring you back to this place of pure expression, pure creativity. And I think that what children's book authors and anyone that works in children's entertainment, they have somehow retained this very pure part of themselves that allows them to express freely. And it's just so weird, the stuff that comes out. So I've been tapping into that without drugs. I use meditation now in my old age because I just couldn't handle it. And, these really fun little ideas and stories have come out. And what I did with Zara, the book I have now, is I shared it with my second graders class. So they were the first people to hear the story, which was then like 3,000 words long, way too long for a children's book. And I promised them that day that not only was I going to publish the book, I was going to dedicate it to them and give them all a copy when it came out. So I really locked myself into a commitment.
Yeah. I love that though. I have an idea and it was kind of like a self-accountability pressure. I'm going to tell everyone about it.
Yeah.
So that I have to do it.
That's what I do. And that's what I teach, especially I'm not a procrastinator. I'm hyper disciplined, self-disciplined, but I also have ADD for real.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to be on the manic side of manic depression. That's the old diagnosis that I got a long time ago. So I have to reel myself in. And the only way that I can really stay course is to invite other people. It's not even self-accountability. It's an invitation for other people to hold me accountable.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I have a ton of questions about Zara and about her character, but I do want to ask you a question about you decided to take a community college course.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, like, is that the norm for you when you want to learn how to do something? Like, I'm going to find a teacher, I'm going to dive in with somebody who knows how to do this.
So I have stopped calling myself a high school dropout. And now I say that I left school early to pursue my own curated education experience.
I love that.
I love to learn. Right now I'm teaching myself Spanish. So my insomnia has turned into Spanish lessons in the middle of the night. But yeah, I'm not even going to attempt because I will embarrass myself, but I'm loving it. It's the most fun I've been having in so long. But yeah, I look for teachers. I think one thing about growing up with parents who were humble to a fault is that I acknowledge where I'm not the expert. I acknowledge that I do have a lot to learn. I acknowledge that being a student is actually a really cool thing. So yeah, I am a course, schooling online program, especially whatever I can get for free. I don't use the word junkie anymore, but in that vein. Like, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Recently I posted a picture of a watercolor video. I was painting something. I posted it, and this woman said, "Oh, wow, like you're so much further along with your technique than I am. How did you, how are you doing that? Like, which YouTube videos are you watching?" And I said, "Actually, I go and take watercolor classes from a teacher in person. And I've taken the same Watercolor 101 series 4 times."
Oh, really?
Like, I just keep taking the basic, it's the fundamentals. It's like playing scales and going back to those same, but being in the room with someone and other people who are learning at the same time.
Yes.
It's so magical.
Yeah. The other people part is really key. So I love, I'm using this app to learn Spanish and it's really fun, but I have the most fun when I'm listening to a story or watching a television program. And even though that's not the same as another person, it's still that interaction, that engagement. My son, my 20-year-old, he's back living with us now, which has been really awesome. So parents out there with adult children, sometimes it's good when they come back. So he's great. He's a kid. He's an autodidact. He teaches himself everything. He's self-taught musician, self-taught artist, but he decided that he wants to get really serious. He's chosen not to go to college, but he wants to curate his own educational experience. So he bought this $12 online video perspective course on drawing. And and it's really college course where someone had a VHS camera in the back of the room from the early 90s. And he's teaching himself and he's loving it. And just watching him be so inspired and into his personal learning is inspiring me. Yeah, it's just really cool. But he loves that. Even though it's virtual, it's like that teacher in front of him and kind of going through the fundamentals and really understanding how important it is that even no matter how good he is, people, compliment him all the time. And he really is an amazing artist, but he needs to learn the basics too. So that's why I took I had 2 adult books published already. Not adult, books for adults.
Right. Very important distinction.
Books for adults. So I'm a writer. I write books with 70,000 words. I make money at this, but let me tell you, I got an education sitting in that room with it was all retired grandmothers and me.
Yes. I'm sorry, but I just have to say, meditation erotica is an untapped market. I think you might have just hit on something.
That's not my calling, but
probably already out there.
That was my mom thing.
Okay. Somebody has already written that, I'm sure.
Okay. So, yeah, it was really cool, going back and knowing and learning how much I didn't know. I thought I was this fancy writer and I'm going to be in there teaching other people how to do things, and writing kids' books is hard.
Oh, it's a totally different it's a totally different thing. It's its own genre. Like you said, like 3,000 words was too long.
Yeah, 700 words, between 5 and 1,000 words.
That's
500.
incredible. That's incredible.
Can't say anything in that amount of time.
I can't even tell you how my day was.
Dinner in 500 words.
That'd be an interesting practice for wannabe children's book authors. Like, can you have a conversation in less than 500 words and really like do the whole story arc? So as a lifelong learner, as someone who is currently curating your own learning process and will forever be, how is your first book about Zara was about breathing and meditation. I personally have a story that I'm not good at breathing and meditation. And
we're just nodding. Tell me more about this lie.
I mean, I know I'm breathing right now, but I think a lot of us have this idea, this story in our heads that we're not good at it. How can we bring that learner's mind to it? And I know this is a really common question when it comes to meditation, but I actually loved getting your book in the mail because it helped me have that childlike learning attitude toward it.
Right. So what's really beautiful about a child's mindset versus an adult's in all the ways, not just in learning about meditation, of course, all the ways of learning, is that children have so few preconceived ideas of what something is supposed to be. So as an adult, when you think about meditation, you think about that guru on the mountain, sitting for hours with no thoughts in their mind. So for me, part of the learning experience is getting rid of all of these preconceived ideas and these prejudices and redefining what that thing is so it can serve me. So when it comes to even, meditation, for me, meditation, and I say this in my first book, it's simply a way, paraphrasing, it's simply a way to say, hello, I see you. I see that you are a thinking, feeling person that deserves to be heard. And I'm here to be that person for you. So it's a way to connect with my thoughts, not erase them. It's a way to be in stillness in the way that I am not reacting to my environment. I'm not being a robot or a statue. It's a way to quiet my surroundings or kind of like leave a noisy surrounding, but not be perfectly silent. Because the truth of the matter is that we're never perfectly still. We're breathing, the blood is coursing through our veins. Maybe we need to wiggle, especially me with ADD and like all these other tics that happen because of my personality and also my mental health issues. I need to wiggle a little bit to get comfortable. And silence, I don't know that world. I don't know that life with 5 children and then all the things that go on in my head. So it's just intentional, quiet contemplation. It's not about no noise. Because honestly, the noise in my environment serves me, especially during meditation, because I have to go back into a world that's very noisy and chaotic. So with kids, teaching them how to meditate is like easy as pie. That's the easy part. Writing for them is hard. Teaching them how to meditate. I was in a room recently in Baltimore with 280 school children that have very challenged existences. They're from Baltimore City and probably the poorest part of Baltimore City. And they come to school hungry. They come to school maybe not in clean clothes, not because their parents are neglecting them, but just because their parents are so overwhelmed. They all sat and breathed together and exhaled together and listened to the story and were still and engaged. So they knew how to do it because no one told them that this is the way it was supposed to be. They just did it. They accepted that it was something that would help them feel better. And they made that so because that was their truth too. They were just following what they believed to be true. So if you say, I can't meditate, and this is like old, psychology stuff, like armchair psychology stuff. But if you say I can't do something, you're setting yourself up for failure. If you say that this is something that will serve me and maybe be uncomfortable, but at the end of it, I'm going to have like something really beautiful come out of it, you're going to lead yourself to that point.
Yeah.
Actually, I can't say anything in 500 words. That was a very long answer.
This is an hour show, Rebekah. No, I'm kidding. I credit you with, and I don't even know if you remember this conversation, but I asked you something similar a while back. And I said, I have so many knee and back problems that actually like sitting still for a while is nearly impossible and sometimes quite painful. Is it okay if I lay down when I meditate? And you're like, of course. Like, oh, well, that's not the picture that I see.
Well, let's talk about pictures that we see, and not to get into white supremacy and ableism and all that,
Oh,
but let's
no,
go
it's one of
there.
my questions. So
Okay.
let's just go
So
there.
when we think about the picture that we see, like if I say yoga to most people in the Western world, they're going to think this tall, very lean, white woman, right? So that's yoga. So if you are not that picture, then yoga is not for you. If I think, of meditation is like sitting for a very long period of time on the floor with my legs crossed, then if you are disabled, right, if you have trouble or pain sitting, like then meditation isn't for you. So there's all of these ideas that are very exclusive. And for me, you said in my bio, I try to make mental health tools very accessible and inclusive. That's what it means. If you're Black, if you're poor, if you're disabled, if you're gay, if you're trans, if you're whatever, like if this tool is not going to work for you, then it's not something that I can offer. And because I see so many people offering these, quote unquote healing tools that will really only work for a few people. And that's why I had so much trouble in this community in finding my own healing, because I was sitting in a room with a bunch of 5'6", very thin, blonde, beautiful women. But I'm like, of privilege, financial and otherwise. And I'm like, oh, this is why this isn't working for me. It's not for me.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And how did that inspire writing these books for kids?
I am a biracial Black woman who is a biracial Black child who did not have health insurance. I did not have access to good mental health tools. My healthcare was very mismanaged, not because my parents were bad parents, but because the system was not set up for me. And as an adult getting access to those, I realized how much they could have helped me. So what Zara is, it's very much autobiographical, except the parents are changed. My dad was Black and my mom was white, switched in the book. Zara's mother is a beautiful Black woman. Her dad is this tall, geeky white guy with glasses, and he's so cute. I love him. He's actually modeled after my oldest daughter's boyfriend, Mitchell. He's so cute.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So you see it now. So Zara is quite literally a love letter to my 7-year-old self. At 8 years old, I was hospitalized with my first kind of mental health outburst, breakdown, 8. So at 7, if I had these tools, I think that my path would have looked very different. So yeah, so that's what Zara is.
Yeah.
And she works for everybody, right? Like she really does. Like I go into schools where these kids, and we have the Spanish version coming out soon. A lot of the schools I go into, the kids' parents, they're first generation American, their parents do not speak English. Like these are the homes they're going into. They need tools that work for them.
Yeah.
And I want to make this point very clearly, because I know that a lot of people listening to you are probably in the health and wellness community and want to go out and help and want to be of service. It's very important to me that when we go into these schools, we don't go in with a mindset of charity, but rather a mindset of sister and brotherhood, of family, because these kids are me. So when I go in, it's not like, oh, these poor kids that are suffering. Like these kids are really me. And what I'm doing is making an investment in my family and in our collective future, because there's so much magic in these kids that's just going to be untapped if we don't go and make sure that they get the resources they need to succeed on their own.
The people can go onto Instagram, and we'll shout this out later, but you have a couple of different Instagrams that people can see some pictures of you telling the story of Zara, either your first book, Zara's Big Messy Day, that turned out okay, or the new book that's coming out, Zara's Big Messy Bedtime. You telling the story in classrooms, these adorable kids who are just like, oh, so excited, or little kids, pictures taken by their parents at home.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's so awesome is that both of these books, your first book especially, was a big Kickstarter success. And part of the mission of this book was to get the book into the hands and in the classrooms of these kids in Baltimore. Tell us about that process, like the strategy, because it's a really interesting model, right? To like self-publish, self-fund, and also have this give back involved.
I'm going to give this credit to my parents. So and I do want to tell the story because this is where it all comes from. So at the height of the AIDS crisis, before Ronald Reagan. Oh my gosh, I'm so aging myself here.
I'm so with you.
Before Ronald Reagan, I remember this, before Ronald Reagan would use the word AIDS, he wouldn't say it. My father, he was a carpenter, and he got a job for a couple whose son was dying of AIDS, because everybody died of AIDS then. And they had to bring him home for hospice care, and they needed to make changes to their home to be able to accommodate him. And we were poor. We weren't broke. I'm broke now. I was poor then. And we were struggling to put food on the table and all of that. And I remember a fight between my parents because my dad was doing the job at the cost of materials and he wouldn't take money. And it was a really big job. And, my mother, they were both Christian tradition. We went to a Christian church. But my mother was like, we have to feed our own family. And then my dad said, but this is our family.
Oh my gosh.
I know. What a great deal. And the other day, my son came to me. We have a friend of his living with us. And I said, does she need this thing? Let me get this thing for her. And he's like, Mom, you don't need to keep doing this. Like, we're like, what? And like, okay, this is not like I'm praising myself. I'm just saying, like, this is the lesson I learned from my father. He's like, you don't need to do this. And I'm like, she has parents. And I'm like, see, you don't understand. That's not the way it works, because every child is my child. Like, you have proximity to me and I have legal responsibility for you. So like, I have to put this roof under your head. But like, this is not the way we work as a family. And I made that very clear. Like, we as a family, like this is a world family, and we in this house do this.
Yeah.
So with the book, and it's not about tithing. It's not about a certain percentage of my income that I have to give away. It's about, as I become abundant, I have to share that abundance. So with the book, every single time, and this model is old. You buy a book, I gift a book, period. But what we also do is we allow people to sponsor classrooms. So you can sponsor a half classroom or a full classroom of books. It's 100% of the money. It's direct giving. It's just funneled through me. 100% of the money goes to buying the books for the kids. And then I provide other resources and assemblies for them. So if it's local, we started in Baltimore City because I have a partner there, Quentin Benny, who helped me get into schools. But I'm going into New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York, all over, Washington, D.C. to bring these programs to the kids. It is my greatest joy, because let me tell you, when you roll a cart of 300 books out into an auditorium, the kids like flop on the floor like they're in the Oprah audience.
They lose their minds.
They lose their minds. And, like what I was saying one time, do I really have to sign 300 books? Do I have to do this, Quentin? And he's like, Rebekah, this is probably the only time in these kids' lives that an author, like someone who wrote a book, is coming in to pay attention to these kids. Like, you're going to sign the books.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I signed them. But so the model is, it's not perfect. It's not worked out. It wasn't a strategy. and then I have people helping me with that, with the nonprofit. But the model is, I don't have unless I give. There's none of this is mine. None of this belongs to me. None of it belongs to me. Not even my ideas. Like, none of this belongs to me. It was all gifted to me. And if I'm hoarding it, if I'm keeping it to myself, or I'm using it for my own profit or my own pleasure, then it's not, I'm really being irresponsible with the gift.
So I don't know if you can see right behind me, but there is my autographed picture of Dolly Parton right behind me in my office.
I love
you and I have you and I have a serious shared love for Dolly, as probably most of my listeners, because she is the most loved musician in America. Yeah. And she has given away over 1 million books.
Well over.
What's
the number? I want to look. We got to look that up for the show notes, because I think it's like I think it's an incredible amount.
Yeah. And it started out, she was inspired by her father, who couldn't read when she was growing up, and it's become a huge, beautiful story of her work. And I just want to point out that you and Dolly, you're like.
I've cited her as an inspiration. It's like, I want to be the Dolly Parton / Mr. Rogers of children's publishing. I have some things in my past that wouldn't allow me to be in the Mr. Rogers category, but Dolly's pretty wild, so I will definitely. She's done lots of really saucy things that give her permission still to be around children. It's fine. So yeah, I adore her. And our backgrounds aren't dissimilar. The father who raised me, not my biological father, but the father who raised me, is from Kansas, and he grew up kind of like on a dirt patch, which was a farm. And he would say like half the month we would eat off of government assistance and half the month we would pop chicken feed. Like that's how they lived. He had 2 pairs of pants. He only graduated from the 8th grade. He was functionally illiterate and probably the most talented people, artistically, just creatively, that I've ever known. But so that all lives in me and I'm super grateful for it. Super grateful.
What are some of the stories and feedback that you've heard from your little readers and their parents?
My favorite story, because I'm a bossy pants and I love salty, sassy children, is that the kids are telling their parents now in moments of tension to smell the flowers and blow out the candles. So I've gifted a bunch of tiny therapists. I don't want that to keep anyone from buying the book or supporting the campaign. But so the kids really, they pick up on it the first time they read it. Mm-hmm. There is a repetition. There is a science to it. It's not just, I did study and figure this out, but there's a repetition to it that allows the children to pick it up right away and then to implement immediately. And that's the theme of every Zara book going forward, is that Zara has a problem. She allows herself to be helped. So she gets advice from a teacher or mentor, like that's me, right? Mm. And then she takes that and empowers herself to take care of herself. So by the end of every story, she's using the tool and she's seeing that it works. And it doesn't work perfectly every time. It's just that it's something that she can have to help her figure things out. Yeah. So the kids are doing that. Some other feedback that I love is that people are saying, I got this book and we've read it every day since it's been in the house. The kids ask for it again and again, that it's the first time that they've been able. I have people who have kids on the autism spectrum, kids with severe ADD and ADHD. This is the first time my kid sat down and listened and been able to calm him or herself down. Mm-hmm. Like really remarkable stories that make me believe, and I am a deeply spiritual person, that this is not something of me, it came through me. Mm-hmm. Because I was just trying to sell a couple dozen books and it really turned into something that I was not expecting and did not plan, but it's something that feels absolutely perfect.
Yeah. So let's talk about the latest book that's coming out. Yay. It's April 2020.
Yes.
And Zara's Big Messy Bedtime.
Yeah. Big Messy Bedtime. Not a story about getting your kids to go to sleep. So there's some false advertising. No, but see, you're still going to love it. So it can help with sleep and it's going to help with a lot of other things. So in this second adventure, Zara is helping her father to move into his new apartment, to the heartbreak of some of the adult readers. The kids got over it right away. Like the kids were totally cool with it. And you could tell in the first book that they did not live together. But Zara's dad's moving into a new apartment and she's getting this new bedroom and she's getting this new routine. And when she breaks her regular routine, she gets a little messed up over it. It feels a little messy and she has a lot of trouble getting to bed. So we introduce Grandma, who's gorgeous. And it's so funny because some of the white people in my audience are like, she looks really young to be a grandmother. And I'm like, #melanin. Because this was actually modeled after a real life grandma. I sent a picture to my illustrator. So she actually looks older than the woman does in real life. She's this lovely, gorgeous, wise grandmother who comes in and gives Zara this really beautiful little poem about seeing not the good and the bad, but both the things that make us feel not so great and also the things to celebrate in every moment. And it helps with transition and perspective. Mm-hmm. And Zara gets it. And she figures it out. And then she likes staying in her new room that her little brother Sam is not allowed into at her dad's house. So she has a brother who's just terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So
modeled after my little sister in real life.
Yeah, these stories are, like I said, I loved Zara's Big Messy Day. And sorry, I keep saying Zara. And
I say Zara too, and it's terrible. South Jersey.
I'm just trying to be like you. That's it. It was a reminder, like I still have children's books from my own childhood that I kept, quote unquote, for my son. Really, I kept that for myself. I have all my Berenstain Bears books in my closet. Like I see.
Those were long books.
They were really long.
Weird have all mine too. They were weird.
They got weirder as they went on. Like the newer ones are weirder. The old ones are much sweeter, I think. Anyway, what I love about these books and yours is that it's very simple reminders. It's very simple lessons of what's important to us.
They're the foundational lessons. And I used to get down on myself, about teaching 4-minute meditations and these very simple concepts. But I had to, in self-reflection, sit down and say, is this or is this not true? Is this not something that actually worked for me? Mm-hmm. And am I not diminishing, dismissing, denying my own real lived experience and my own real lived healing by not putting these messages forward? So if it's not simple, if it's not accessible, then is it really something that can heal you? Is it something that's sustainable? So I think that these lessons are the most important.
Yeah. So tell us how we can get these books. How do we get the new Zara book?
So you have to support the Kickstarter. And if you're listening to this after the Kickstarter, this link will still work. You go to bigmessybooks.com. And there you will be able to pre-order books, pick up the whole catalog of Wheat Penny Press books because I am publishing books by other authors. You'll be able to support classrooms. And I promise you that no matter what level of support you're on, you will feel really good about yourself because you are supporting free books for kids, marginalized kids in under-resourced school districts. We work with a lot of Title I schools. So bigmessybooks.com, bigmessybooks.com.
Awesome.
I'm learning.
Yes, just repeat. I call it pleasantly pushy. That's how I get anything done. You have a couple of great Instagram feeds that I would love to share with people too.
Okay. Well, I have to put a warning on this one. You can go to Beck's Life, which is BEXLIFE. You are going to hear talk about meditation, but much to the dismay of some audience members, I also talk about racism. I also talk about accessibility for the most marginalized of us. And I think
so if you can't handle that stuff, just don't go.
Just don't go.
Just don't go. But you should.
You should, because I'm telling you, it's so funny because people sometimes call me negative when they hear about me talking about racism, but I'm like, I am the most positive, optimistic person on the planet for reals because I'm here still doing it. So Beck's Life, I would love to talk to you there. And then Zara's Big Messy Day, that's a long one, but Zara's Big Messy Day is where you can meet Zara and you can hear her speak to you directly. And she tells about, sometimes she lets me on there to talk.
That's really sweet.
Yeah. She's talking about her friends and it's kid friendly. And she talks about her heroes and different kids that are doing really great things in the world. So you can go and see her there.
Yeah. And I really want to recommend going to bigmessybooks.com and pre-order the book. You can there's all different levels that you can sign up to support with. You can get a copy of the book sent to you when it publishes really soon. You can get all kinds of cool bonuses, some cool digital stuff that you can download as well. And these books are really wonderful. They're really wonderful.
Thank you. At every single level of support, by the way, at every single level of support, even if you just throw a couple bucks a donation, you're going to get the entire Wheat Penny Press bundle. So that's the books digitally, because I do really want this to be accessible and I want you to steal from me and share it all around. I want you to do that too. And you'll get both Zara books in the Spanish language editions, the digital editions. So, and the materials come in Spanish too. I have a really wonderful woman helping me out with that.
So cool. So I have a few questions that I like to ask people at the end of my show. Are you game?
Sure.
Okay.
No.
So no, I'm out. You'd be the first person who ever said no. So this show's called Her Rules Radio, where women and a few cool dudes go to learn how to live life by our own rules. What's a way that you had to break the rules to get to where you are now?
Most recently, in talking a lot about my identity as a biracial Black woman, and making it very much more part of my work and the way that I communicate with the world, I had to break a lot of the rules of what that meant, how I was allowed to show up or what I was allowed to say or spaces that I was allowed to be in. But more importantly, I had to have an understanding that the rules weren't made for me or people like me, and they never will. They'll never work. So if I don't break the rules, I'm never going to work. So yeah, that was the biggest way.
And what's a rule that either you followed or a rule that you made for yourself to get to where you are now?
A rule that I followed was that if I wasn't, I had to be nice to be heard. I had to be pleasant. So when talking about really hard topics, if I didn't put like a little smile and a, shiny border around it, that it wasn't going to be acceptable. And that's just not true.
And finally, how do you discern the difference between a rule you're going to break and a rule you're going to follow? Like, how do you decide? Is this
because I am a person who really appreciates mentors and teachers. I'm a person who loves to learn from people who have already done the things that I want to do. So the Maya Angelou's, the Angela Davis's, the Toni Morrison's, the Malcolm X's, I look at them and I say, okay, so this rule that I'm trying to follow, how would they feel about that? It's like, I wouldn't hang out with anybody that, Harriet Tubman would have shot, that line. And she would shoot a lot of people. So so I have to think about in terms of that. I look at the people who've done the things I want to do.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's
what rules were they breaking?
Yeah. That's interesting. That's the first time anyone's responded with quite that answer.
With Harriet Tubman shooting people.
Certainly that. But like, what would my mentors, what would my inspirations?
I'm just a baby human. I'm just a baby soul. I don't even know if I've been here before. So I really need my teachers. Me
too.
I'm too goofy to be an old soul.
I want everybody to go to bigmessybooks.com. You go to Beck's Life on Instagram or Zara's Big Messy Day on Instagram. Rebekah Borucki, I adore you. Thank you for this work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I really need the help, all the help I can get.
We all do. We all do. All right. You heard it, listeners. Go to bigmessybooks.com and we'll be back next week. Thanks for being here.